Getting about those, thanks again for tuning into yet another video. I am currently prepping the TCMT FXRT fairing for primer. I'm gonna hit it with primer, just to get rid of like these minor little imperfections. Just giving you guys an update. Of course, I mean I could show you exactly what to do, but if you guys been watching the channel, you guys pretty much know. All right, the scuff pad, the red one, that's a 300 grit. I believe 320 grit, the red one. So this is pretty much what you use to kind of prep the surface for paint, primer, whatever you're spraying on top of the surface. I like using the scuff pad on these little spots here, of course, where there's curves, there's contours and stuff like that. You don't want to use a sanding block if you have a rounded surface. If you use a sanding block on a rounded surface, you're going to get a flat spot. So you're supposed to feel it with your hand and kind of go with the flow of the design. You can really change the shape of this depending on, if there's filler or putty, kind of like right here, or if it's, resin, which is this clear stuff, this white stuff, that's all resin. You could 100%, sand that off, that shape, so you can really shape it. All right, so you guys can see I've been pretty much doing all of the small spots. I have a orbital sander. This is a dual action orbital sander. It just helps prevent from actually digging into the surface, and it's also a padded. It's a padded padded disc, so you guys can see it's padded. So it really takes the shape of what you're sanding and stuff like that. So for the large areas, kind of like this, I was using, of course, the sander just to kind of speed stuff up. And like I said, it's an orbital sander, so it really does protect the surface, and it prevents burn throughs and all kinds of other stuff. So it's a little bit more delicate than a grinder. And like I mentioned, for the smaller stuff, kind of like this right here, this little area right here, you can't really fit the orbital sander unless you have like a 2-inch or a 3-inch DA, which I do have. You could also do that, but I just feel like the scuff pad works a little bit better. There's also these sponges, these rubber sponges that you could wrap your sanding paper, and that would of course take the shape. And it's about, I believe, half an inch. It's a half an inch sanding pad, and it's flexible, so it'll take the shape of whatever you're sanding. So so far overall, other than the repair of the TCMT, I've noticed that it's been pretty much prepped from TCMT. There's a lot of repairs already on the actual fairing. Here, let me just show you guys. So you guys can see, all along this edge, you can see there's filler or putty or glazing putty. I'm not sure. It feels like a filler, but it's a little soft. So I'm guessing it's like a putty that they use over there. You can see while I'm sanding it, of course, I am feathering the edges from the filler, resin, and the primer. And you can see how the primer fills in all the little imperfections, and that's pretty much what we do with primer. You fill in all those little imperfections without removing too much material. So you can see it's been repaired all along this area. It was cracked. Let me tell you, my Dominator, after doing all the prep, painting it, my Dominator also cracked along this whole edge. All right, so I'm guessing this is where it's probably fused together, because I believe this is in two different parts. All right, so like I said, this is just to kind of prep the surface, and it's also doing, of course, the other job of getting the low spots and kind of showing you where everything's at. I can tell you right here, there's a high spot here, and there's like a little dip. Let me see if the light can catch it. I'm not sure if the camera's going to pick it up. There's a little bit of a low spot right there, of course. We could repair it. You guys can see my other repair, of course, right here. That's all angel hair and body filler. Same thing over here. You guys, if you guys saw the video of me, repairing this and fixing it, you guys can see it looks 1,000 times better. This is all body filler. From here, you guys can see from here all the way over here. and that's because of just like the shape that that this fairing was taking. You know, I've altered the shape of it, so the repair was only like right here. All right, so we have about a 1/4 inch of body filler right here. Normally it's not, you know, it's not a good idea of having an edge of body filler, because it kind of makes a weak spot. You know, there's a weak spot, and it's also difficult because you have to shape it. So all of this right here is for me shaping it. All right, and the reason why we have the body filler all the way up here, even though the repair is only down here, is because I extended this part of the fairing, this little peak of the fairing. I've extended it about maybe a 1/4 inch or so, a little bit more than that. So we'll see how it turns out with the body filler. You see all those little imperfections, all those little scratches. I believe that's all 220 or 880. You could, of course, use the red scuff pad to get rid of some of that, but then you're going to be removing material. I don't want to remove material anymore. I want to add material. So by me spraying it with a primer, high build primer, I'm able to address all of these little imperfections, and then of course I'm able to flatten it and smooth it all out. So we'll see how the body filler, how the primer looks, because that's what I'm, you know, a little bit, because it's a little difficult for me to kind of see it by eye, you know, to see how it looks and how it flows. It's a little difficult because I have so many different shades. I have body filler, I have resin, I have the primer, and then of course I have their putty or their filler. The yellow one, that's their filler. I have the green one, that's the Bondo, and then I have the blue one, which is underneath of there. You can see it's a blue filler. That's the angel hair. That's the angel hair body filler. So the goal would be to kind of, you know, make everything uniform with the high build primer. And by doing the scuff pad, I'm prepping the full surface. That way I get good adhesion all over the fairing. The camera's getting hot. It's a hot day today, guys. It's a hot day. So let's go ahead and turn this over like so. Put the sander in here, and just be a little cautious when you're prepping this stuff. You know, this on stucco does not mix well. You'll create more scratches, but you know, we're in the process of getting this prepped, so you know, you'll just be giving yourself extra work. So we can see there's a little hole here, there's a few holes here and there. We'll probably have to hit this with the putty. Those little imperfections, those little holes, that's probably from the filler. Like I was mentioning earlier before I got, you know, sidetracked, you can see the repair. All right, when I did my my Dominator FXRT fairing, all right, drop the camera. So a lot of my repairs from the Dominator, it was all along this edge. Like I mentioned, it looks like TCMT already went ahead and they repaired a lot of that stuff. So if it wasn't for, you know, this, and if it wasn't for this would have been a very quick and easy prep. Surprisingly, I also went ahead and I cleaned up this whole edge right down here. So this was all done by me. I cleaned this up. All right, this was kind of like the Dominator. Looked pretty bad. You had spots here and there. Here, let me show you what it probably looked like, as I haven't prepped or cleaned up any of this. Oh, you know what? No, I did actually clean this up. I mean, there's a little bit of like imperfections, but this stuff's like underneath of the fairing, so I'm not too worried about it. But I just went ahead and I just smoothed this out, made it a little bit cleaner, because I'm not entirely sure if this is going to clear my forks on my Lowrider S. So, I mean, they claim that this will fit your Lowrider, but it's not a Lowrider S. So you have standard forks on the Lowrider. On the Lowrider S, you have a little bit of a wider front end because they're inverted. So we'll see. You know, more little details on prepping it. Like I said, you're just going to be doing with the red scuff pad all of these contours and all of these edges that the sander won't be able to get to. All right, and we're using a 2-stage primer. I like the 2-stage primer because I'm able to use filler and I'm able to use putty on top of the primer. This primer that TCMT has is like a single stage. I was wiping it down with alcohol and it was coming off. My rag was turning gray because of the primer was rubbing off. So I'm guessing this is like a single stage primer. I mean, it still does the job because you can see all the little imperfections where the primer's in. But when it comes to the single stage, you're not able to use the, I mean, you can still use the putty, but if the putty is wet, then it's not going to work, you know. So I'm going to just go ahead and address this, make that flat, and then we'll make sure everything else is ready. The whole surface needs to be scuffed and prepped for the primer. That way, like I said, that way it has good adhesion. You can see on this edge too, all of the repair from TCMT. You can see all of that. So when I worked on my Dominator, this is what I did. I mean, I spent the whole time doing this, prepping this whole edge, repairing this. Then I also repaired this whole edge. I had a low spot somewhere in this area, and I went ahead and I repaired it on my Dominator. The rest of the bike was perfect. I mean, the rest of the fairing was perfect on the Dominator. You know, I didn't have to do anything here at all. It was just like up here as well. This whole, like, where it's all been prepped. So I don't know if TCMT saw my prep video, and then they went ahead and they addressed and fixed all of that. Alright, so now we are currently prepping the surface, just cleaning it. You have all of this dust. Alright, so this is all sanding dust. You see all those little streaks? That is just primer dust from when I was sanding this down. Alright, the reason we want to clear, or the reason why we want to clean the surface is because we have, like I said, we want a good solid surface for the primer or paint to adhere to, of course. If you paint on top of loose primer or dust, it's not going to grip properly. Alright, you're going to start, of course, getting these spots. Once you start prepping it for the next spot, then you'll start to see where the primer is going to start to fall off, because you're painting on top of loose, you know, a loose surface, because it's just all of this is dust from the primer, from the primer from TCMT. So we got to clean it. We got to make sure it's nice and clean. You know, we'll have to always prep this. You know, even for all those steps, whenever you you know, whenever you get ready to paint, you have to make sure the surface is prepped. You're going to go through a lot of blue rags. You're going to go through a lot of, you know, cleaning solutions, because you got to have a solid surface. You don't want to spend, you know, 40 hours or 8 hours prepping something, or 7 hours prepping something, and then have a contaminated surface. Because if you have one contaminant, it's going to ruin everything. And then you'll have to start all over again, and it's going to suck. So having plenty of rags, cleaning solutions, of course. I like to prep with the aerosol, with the window cleaner. Let that kind of air out, and, you know, just get all those chemicals or all those contaminants off of the surface. So I'm currently using just water on there, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to hit it with the Invisiglass. The Invisiglass, and then we'll see how it looks. You know, there's still those little streaks. That's all just the streaks. That's all just wet dust or wet primer dust. So we got to just make sure all of this is pretty, you know, clean and ready for the surface. The stuff inside, who cares? All right, so we're pretty much ready for the primer. I'm gonna hit it with just the cleaning solvent. Sorry, guys. So the reason why, of course, we're doing the primer, high build primer, is because, you know, two reasons. You want to fill in all these imperfections, which are they're pretty much filled in here. But I want to make sure my primer is filled in, and so I could, you know, see if there's anything missing, or I'm missing something or whatever. Right. Reason number two is, this is resin right here, or this is fiberglass. All this white stuff, let's pretend this is metal. All right. So if this is metal, your paint or your base is going to have a difficult time sticking to the surface. So by spraying the primer, that gives us something for the paint, for the base to grip onto. All right. That's reason number 2. And reason number 3 why I'm spraying the primer is so I could see if there's an imperfection here in this area with my repair. All right. I'll be able to eyeball it once I have the primer. The issue right now is because it's a different color, my eye is drawn to it. All right. You see it's a green, there's a blue, there's like a gray, light green. You know, having this one uniform color, I'll be able to just look at the shape and the contour of the surface. It looks good right now, but once we have the primer, I'll be able to really look at it, and I'll be able to see if there is something funny with my repair. All right, and of course, like I said, we're going to fill in all these imperfections, the 220 grit scratches. So that's, you know, the main reason why we're doing it, because we're building up layers, we're covering the imperfections, and if there's holes or there's low spots or whatever, we'll be able to see, because once you start sanding this down, kind of like this area, this is a high spot, but it's feathered in, so it's being blended in. The reason, of course, like I said, with the primer, you'll be able to see if you have primer, and then you have around that primer, you have a little spot here in primer, and then around that, it's all bare metal or fiberglass, then you know that's a low spot. You know, if you're having a white spot here, and then you have a bunch of primer, you know, surrounding that surface, which it could be bare metal, it could be fiberglass like this, then you know that's a high spot. You know, the fiberglass by high build primer, we're like I said, we're going to spray 3 heavy coats, and what I'm hoping is for a smooth surface of just one color, all right, which would be my primer color. If I start seeing, you know, dark gray primer, because my primer's light gray, if I start seeing dark primer, then I know that's a high spot, or I'm getting closer to the surface. So that's how you kind of use all these layers to kind of give yourself an idea. Same thing right here. If I'm sanding down this and I'm trying to get it to look uniform, and then I start seeing Bondo, then that means, you know, that's a high spot, you know, stuff like that. But once we get all of this kind of feathered out and, you know, uniform, just getting it feathered out, it really blends in the imperfections. All right, I know I'm talking a lot, but, you know, there's a lot of little details. All right, so here we have our primer, high build, primer gray. This stuff's very thick. I just finished mixing it up. You always got to mix primer before you use it. Pretty much anything. Any type of paint, you always have to mix it up. All right, because it settles towards the bottom, of course. So I like doing this because it kind of helps me keep it clean instead of you know, dropping it all into my mixer. So if you look at the instructions, of course, you guys can see 4 parts primer, 1 part activator, and then if you wanted to, that's 1 part reducer. All right, so we went ahead and we sprayed the primer, sprayed 3 coats, 3 heavy coats of primer. My main focus was this. Of course, the back of it, I'm not too worried about it, but we were able to put a lot of primer. You can actually see some of the imperfections. Like I said, a lot of this is being filled in with the primer, so we'll see how it turns out. You can see cracks, imperfections. You can see holes. See right there, right there. So, you know, the primer's already doing its job. You see all the, you see this? I'm not sure the camera's gonna pick it up, but there's a big old crack from here all the way down here. So that's where we're gonna use the putty. Like this, all this little stuff here, we're gonna use the putty. All right, you can see the front of it, the shape. Now that it's all one solid color, it looks like it flows in nicely. You can see the shape is uniform. So I really like the way I was able to shape it. You can see that, you know, it really like peeks out right here. You see right there how it kind of changes the shape of it. This is from TCMT, and then this part from here is all me. That's all me shaping it and pulling this point out a little bit more, because when I was holding their headlight cover, I was able to see that gap there. So we'll see what that trim looks like on the TCMT windshield cover. Maybe it blends in, maybe it's thick, but I just, when I was putting the headlight cover on there, I was able to see about a 1/4 inch, you know, gap between the headlight cover and the fairing. So that's why I pulled that peak out, so I could cover that up. And still wet. I went ahead and I scratched that. I just sprayed it, so it's still wet. You know, we're gonna sand it down anyways, but you know, try not to do that, because then, you know, when you're sanding it down, you're trying to make it all flat and uniform. You'll have that little, that little imperfection from my finger. I'm pretty sure we'll be able to cover it, most of it, with the base and then the metal flake, because the metal flake, you always spray it pretty heavy. So let's go ahead and look at, I'm not sure if the camera's going to pick it up here. Let me grab my light so you can see hole. You can see little holes. The holes that were right here looks like they were actually covered up. So you could also see that there's a lot of little debris, but it's not really debris. It looks like debris, but it's not. It's just chunks of primer. Like I said, this is a high build. You're gonna get these little, you know, blobs of primer. Here, let's go ahead on this side. You see that? It's okay, because we have to sand down this whole surface. So this is all from, of course, the gun. All this like debris stuff, all these blobs, that's all from the sprayer. All right, and that's just what it is. It's a high build. You could also reduce this stuff. If you guys remember in the instructions, you can reduce it. All right, so since we're here on the topic of primer, I just wanted to show you guys, of course, the different types. So this of course is your two-stage, because you need an activator. Two-stage primer, or 2K primer. This is your single-stage primer. I guess you could call it that. No activator required. You could spray this with a reducer, but it's pretty much ready to spray. All right. So they're both good options, all right? But this is what you need when you're still doing a little bit of body work. Like I mentioned, this stuff, an acetone or thinner or anything like that, especially the putty. The putty has those ingredients in the putty. That's what makes it a thin little paste that you can really push into those cracks and those imperfections. All right. I've worked with this. Like I said, I have applied. If your putty is wet, then it will smear the primer right off the surface, and it's gonna suck. All right, it's gonna dissolve it. Like I said, I was cleaning the fairing with alcohol, and when I was cleaning it, I was rubbing the primer off from TCMT. They're using a single stage primer. So this is ready to spray. You can use it. Yes, it's easier, of course. But man, having the 2K stuff with the activator, once this stuff dries, you can use all kinds of chemicals on this to clean, and it's not gonna wipe off. It sticks pretty good. You know, just the adhesion and everything. You know, all those properties of having the 2K primer is a lot better. Of course, this is gonna cost you a lot more. You know, this I believe was like 100 and something 3-4 years ago when I got this stuff. This, you know, this was what, like $40 or less than that. I don't know. It's pretty cheap stuff. I just, you know, I wouldn't. It's not good to work with, especially when you're using the putty. Or you just have to make sure the putty's very, very pasty and not watery. All right, so you guys can see I have applied the putty, all the little imperfections and all the cracks and all the little holes. So everything's already pretty much filled in with the putty. Basically, I just pressed it in there with my finger, like so. I hope it's still good. My dog was chewing on the cap of this thing, and I don't know if it's all dry. So we'll see if it actually still works. She was chewing on the cap, so it looks like it's still working. It looks like it's drying. So you can see. So of course we're gonna fill in all the little spots, and then we're gonna sand everything together with the primer and the putty. You guys can see it all the way here. A lot of the cracks, like I mentioned earlier, they're all here. I mean, the filler primer did most of the job. Now we're just kind of touching it up, and by the time we sand everything down, we're gonna see just these little hairline cracks of red. And then of course, if we have little holes, you're gonna see those little pinholes in red as well. And that's just what the putty's doing. So anyways, we have the lower here. I do have these little pinholes right in here in this area. Where is it? Yeah, all right, right here. You guys see it? very minor. You can see there's little holes right there, okay? So what we're going to do, because I already did it on the fairing, I already prepped this. So we're going to go ahead and get some putty. So we're just going to press in those imperfections, work it in there, and then we're going to fill those in. And then of course we're going to go back and just sand this. Do we have any more? I think that was it. So that's what we're doing now. We're just grabbing the putty, working that in there, and then we're going to wait for this to dry, and then we'll sand it down. And that's pretty much what I did on the fairing. You guys can see. Alright, so I went ahead and prepped it. You guys can see all the little pinholes filled in with the putty. Right here, for some reason, it didn't take this little spot right here. You see that? I don't know why it didn't take. Maybe it's just, maybe it isn't good anymore, the putty. So we're just going to keep on sanding this down. I'll probably reapply some more putty on there. I mean, this, you're not going to see this on the final product. You're not going to see that. But I mean, the putty's supposed to fill that in. I don't know why it didn't take. Maybe it is no good. So let's go ahead and try to do it. Or maybe I didn't push it in hard enough or something. Or maybe it's just too dry. I'm guessing it's just too dry now. It's supposed to look like that. For some reason it just didn't take. So it's supposed to look like that, you know, once it's all said and done. But I don't know, maybe I'm guessing the putty's no good anymore. So we're just gonna go ahead and just take our time, sand this down. Of course, you're seeing some of the layers underneath the primer. Maybe it's not dry yet. It feels dry to me, but I'm gonna keep on working at this, and then maybe I'll probably spray another coat of primer. You know, sometimes it's gonna take a couple layers of primer. It could happen. So what we're going for is a smooth finish. Alright, so we're pretty much done with sanding it down. I had some sanding paper from Temu that's supposedly a 320, but it was just removing way too much material. So I just did it by hand. Everything was done with the scuff pad, and now we have to clean it. But you can see where the putty kind of, you know, did its job, filled in all those little imperfections. You can see all the little stuff right there all along. Of course, these cracks. You know, that's what the putty does. It just fills in all the little imperfections that are too big for the primer. So you can see it's all one solid color. I am pretty happy with it. Looking at, of course, this area where I extended it, you know, looks pretty uniform. It doesn't stand out because I already put the shadow to it. You can see it doesn't like have any crazy waves or anything like that. So this is what I repaired, of course. And then of course we also have the other little section, if you guys saw that video right here. Let's see if I can lower the camera. I have it on the tripod now. So we're going to lower the camera. You can see the imperfections of the I believe this is resin, these holes. But once again, you can see how the putty, you know, addressed those issues. Same thing over here at the bottom. I don't want to lower it too much because I'm going to scratch it up against the stucco. But you can see, once again, the putty is doing the job. It's filling all those little holes. And we also have the, you know, the coats as far as the metal flake. It's going to be very thick. I'm going to lay down a lot of coats. So I'm pretty sure that that would also address some of those issues. You could see the low spot here. Let's see. So you can see how the primer is kind of, you know, smooth, and then you have the texture of the filler primer right in there. I don't know if the camera's gonna pick it up, but you can see that it's still a low spot. It is very minor. I'm hoping with the metal flake that will fill in. I'm pretty sure it will. I mean, we're talking like minor stuff. And you can still see, and it basically anything that still has a little bit of texture, you can keep on sanding it. You can see there's still texture here. there's still like minor texture here and there. Like I still have to clean this up, but there's minor texture every, you know, little spot here and there. But I'm actually kind of impressed on, you know, not, I'm just saying, like, if this hadn't happened, and of course the damage on the front hadn't happened, the prep itself would have been very minimal. So, because like I said, TCMT, they already did quite a bit of prep, you know, themselves. They actually addressed all these little cracks and all the minor little stuff that they had. But as far as, you know, just the 2 repairs that I had to do, it was very minimal. There wasn't a lot of Bondo or anything like that. So this is pretty much a fairing that you could, you know, prep it with the 320 and then spray your base coat, whatever color you're doing. Right now, it's pretty much ready. You just have to clean it, wash it, rinse it, let it dry, then do your chemicals as far as cleaning it. And the fairing's pretty much ready for base, if that's what you're doing. And that's pretty much the end of it. That's how you prep it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Life's a risk. Get out there and ride. Later. Go ahead and clean it up and spray it, whatever color you're gonna spray it. Single stage or whatever, you know, 2-stage, 2K, whatever. Life's a risk. Get out there and ride. Later.